ॐ विश्वन्दर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्बोधभूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे। नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे भुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः। प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं। लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थित तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः. I welcome you all to the 19th class of our Bhagavad Gita study. We will read verse number 38 of the second chapter. Sukha dukkhe same krutva
सुखदुःखे समे कृत्वा
labha labhau jaya jayau
लाभालाभौ जयाजयौ
tato yuddhaya yujyasva
ततो युद्धाय युज्यस्व
naivam papamavapsyasi.
नैवं पापमवाप्स्यसि.
As we have seen, Arjuna is suffering from the distressing symptoms of shokaha and mohaha, of sorrow and confusion, the distressing symptoms of the disease of samsara. And he has surrendered to Bhagavan as his student. And he has requested Bhagavan to teach him. And Bhagavan has been teaching him from three standpoints. The Adhyatmika Drishtihi, Dharmika Drishtihi, and Laukika Drishtihi. Adhyatmika Drishtihi is Vedanta Drishtihi, the spiritual viewpoint. Atma Jnana Drishtihi. And then Dharmika Drishtihi is from the standpoint of Dharma. And the Laukika Drishtihi is from the worldly standpoint. So from the Adhyatmika Drishtihi, Bhagavan tells Arjuna, Nanu Shochanti Panditaha, that the Atma Jnanis do not grieve. And what does the Atma Jnani have that the Ajnani doesn't? The only difference is Atma Jnanam. The Atma Jnani knows who I am, whereas the Ajnani does not know that. And therefore, Bhagavan is telling Arjuna that since you don't have Atma Jnanam, that is the reason for your grief. Or in other words, you have Atma Ajnanam. The Atma Ajnanam is the cause of your sorrow. And how is Atma Ajnanam the cause of sorrow? Because it is a case of mistaken identity. Mistaken identity, the Atma Ajnanam, not knowing who I am, invariably results in a mistake about who I am. And this mistaken identity is what subsequently causes the sorrow. So the situation is very similar to the waker who has gone to sleep, having forgotten that he is the waker. And now this waker enters the dream, and there he gets identified with this limited dream body and dream mind. And then he roams around in the dream world. And as he roams around in the dream world, he encounters some situation that is not in keeping with his own likes and dislikes, which brings him immense sorrow in the dream. But for the dreamer, the dream is not a dream. The dream appears to be very real. And now this person is moaning in his sleep, he's groaning in his sleep, saying that I am suffering from so much sorrow. And what does a person who is lying next to him on the bed, that person tries to tap him and tries to awaken him to his own real nature as the waker. He tells him, Ashocyan anvashochaha tvam. You are grieving for something that should not be grieved for. Awaken to your real nature and see that you are free of this sorrow and confusion. In fact, the awakening to one's real nature as the waker itself is immediate freedom from all that sorrow and confusion. So similarly here, Arjuna has Atma Ajnanam. He doesn't know who he really is. And therefore, he is identified with this deficient, wanting, inadequate, apurna, body, mind, that is dependent upon the world. And the world is going through ups and downs, and therefore he is going through emotional turmoil. He is going through shokaha and mohaha, sorrow and confusion. And therefore, Bhagavan is awakening him, trying to awaken him to his real nature, so that he can be free of this sorrow and confusion. So, who am I really? In fact, this is Vedanta Drishti. So, Swamiji condenses the entire teaching of Vedanta into 5 capsules. 5 capsules of Vedanta. And what is that? That in summary says who I really am. So I, the Atma, I am the Atma, that is of the nature of eternal and all-pervading consciousness. I, the Atma, am of the nature of eternal and all-pervading consciousness. I, the Atma, am the only source of permanent peace, security, and happiness. And by my mere presence, I, the Atma, enliven this mithya body mind, and experience the mithya world outside. By my mere presence, I, the Satyam Atma, enliven this mithya body mind and experience the mithya external world. And I, the Satyam Atma, am utterly unaffected by any event that happens within this mithya body mind or in the mithya external world. By forgetting my Atma nature, I convert life into a burden. And by knowing my Atma nature, I convert life into a blessing. These are the 5 capsules of Vedanta. So, Bhagavan is trying to awaken Arjuna to his Atma nature, because Arjuna doesn't know his Atma nature, and by not knowing his Atma nature, he has converted life into a burden. He is experiencing these burdensome symptoms of shokaha and moha. And by knowing his real nature, by knowing his Atma nature, he can be free from these burdensome symptoms of shokaha and moha, because as we saw, I, the Atma, am utterly unaffected by any event. I, the Satyam Atma, am utterly unaffected by any event that happens within this mithya body mind or in the mithya external world, because the law is that mithya cannot touch the Satyam. The mirage water can never wet the sand. The dream can never affect the waker. The coming and going of the ornaments can never affect the gold. Therefore, Bhagavan is trying to awaken Arjuna to his Atma nature. This is from the Adhyatmika Drishti. And then Bhagavan comes down to the Dharmika Drishti. And Bhagavan says, Swadharmam api chavekshana vikampitum arhasi. Even looking at it from the standpoint of your own Swadharma, You should not waver. You should not hesitate. You should not stray away from your dharma. Dharmyat hi yuddhat shreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. That is other than the righteous dharma. There is no greater good for a kshatriya. But he is getting this opportunity to establish dharma. And Bhagavan says that from the standpoint of dharma rakshanartham, establishing dharma, which in turn translates to praja rakshanartham, which is taking care of the praja, the people. And from the standpoint of what is shreyaha, what is good for the kshatriya, this war Arjuna must fight. And then Bhagavan also points out, yadrichaya chopapannam swarga dwaram apavritam. At the gateway of Swarga has opened for you. Sukhinah kshatriyaha partha labhante yuddham itrisham. Only the fortunate kshatriyas get a chance like this, where if they die in the battle, the gateway of heaven, the gateway of Swarga is open for them. And so Bhagavan pointed out the positives of taking up his arms and fighting. And then Bhagavan points out the negative also. If you don't take up this battle, Bhagavan says, Tataha Swadharmam Kirtincha Hitva Papam Avapsyasi. That if you don't fight, if you don't do your Swadharma, then because you are giving up your Swadharma, you will incur papa. So Bhagavan counters the earlier discourse of Arjuna, where Arjuna had said, Atva etan atatayinaha papameva ashayed. Arjuna had said that we will all get papam if we kill these people, he had said. And Bhagavan is countering that narrative by Arjuna by saying that you will incur papam if you don't take up your arms and fight. And then Bhagavan comes down from the Laukika Drishti, from the worldly standpoint, and says that even from the worldly standpoint, you should fight, because if you withdraw from this battle, then you will get kirti, you will get ill fame. This is not loss of fame, but this is disrepute, disrespect. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te vyayam. Your akirti will be abhyayam, he says. That your ill fame will be undecayed. Bhagavan says, Sambhavitasya akirtihi maranadapi atirichyate. Maranad atirichyate, Bhagavan says. So that this disrespect or positive disrepute and disrespect that a person of some standing gets is worse than death. And then Bhagavan says, Bhayad ranad uparatam. They will all spread this narrative that you quit because of fear. Bhayad ranad uparatam vansyante tvam maharathaha yeshancha tvam bahumataha bhutva yasyasi laghavam. That you were held in high regard by those people. You are a constant source of worry for them. They had to always think about strategies to counter you, etc. But now they will treat you like a lightweight, like somebody who is, you will fall in their esteem, basically. And they will say a lot of unspeakable things about you. Avachya vadanscha bahun vadishyanti tava hitaha. Your enemies will say a lot of unspeakable things about you, and they will criticize your capabilities. And Bhagavan then points out that it's a win-win situation for you. Tato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmad uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchaya. And if you die in this battle, you will go to Swarga. If you win in this battle, you will experience this great kingdom. And therefore it's a win-win situation for you. You have nothing to lose, and therefore you must fight, Bhagavan says. And then we come to the transition shloka, where one is transitioning from this three-part teaching, from Adhyatmika, Dharmika, and Laukika Drishti to Karma Yoga. So the first part of the teaching, even though we say it is three parts, primarily it was from the Adhyatmika Drishti, from the Vedanta Drishti, and from the Atma Jnana Drishti. So if we look at, like we were talking about in the last class, if we look at life, the life in the vision of the Veda is right action, should be comprised of right action that culminates in right knowledge. So there are two important aspects to this: right action culminating in right knowledge. So Bhagavan had so far focused about it from the right knowledge aspect, from the Atma Jnana Drishti, from the spiritual standpoint, Vedanta Drishti, for which the sadhana is Jnana Yoga. So the sadhana is called Jnana Yoga. And now Bhagavan is transitioning to the right action. That is Veda Purva Drishti or Karma Yoga Drishti, from the standpoint of right action. And the sadhana here is called Karma Yoga. So Bhagavan points out, Sukha Dukhe, like we read just now, Sukha Dukhe Same Krutva Labha Labhau Jaya Jayau Tato Yudhaya Yujyasva Daivam Papam Avapsisi. So Bhagavan says you should look upon pleasure and pain. Sukha Dukhe, Labha Labhau, gain and loss. Jaya Jaya, victory and defeat. You should look upon them as the same. Bhagavan is saying literally that's what the shloka means. But like we said, that here literally Bhagavan doesn't mean literally see them as the same, because that would be defective vision. One has to see gain as gain, loss as loss, victory as victory, defeat as defeat. So what Bhagavan is really implying here is that my response to these opposite situations, I have to regulate my response in such a way that the response has a sameness of mind, which is called Samatvam. So I subdue my responses, my reactions based on ragas and dveshas, my own likes and dislikes. I don't get swayed by my likes and dislikes, but I regulate my reactions. I regulate the influence of the ragas and dveshas in a way that my response looks the same. There's equanimity of mind. That is what Bhagavan is saying. So what happens in case of a materialist is that if the outcome is expected or better than expected, then the mind, because of the raga, there is raga for this kind of an outcome. So this kind of an outcome he likes, and therefore there is celebration. And he goes on an emotional high. He's jumping up and down and running all over the place and doing a lot of he's in a celebratory mood, basically. On the other hand, if the outcome is less than expected or opposite of what he expects, then he goes into this emotional low. He has helplessness, anger, frustration, and depression. So all of these negative reactions of the mind, they come gushing out. Why? Because there is dvesha. He doesn't like this situation. He in fact hates this situation. And therefore this is what a materialist would generally do in terms of external situations and how he responds to them. But then Bhagavan is pointing out that a karma yogi is alert with regards to what is going on in one's own mind and regulates the response in such a way that there is equanimity. And this is what we call Samatvam. That's why Bhagavan uses Same Kritva. Same kritva is indicating the samatvam of the mind. So now the question is that why is Bhagavan emphasizing on samatvam? Same kritva. Why is this capacity to regulate my response? Why is this capacity for equanimity? Why is it important? And we say that there are two reasons for it. We can look at it from the standpoint of whatever I already know, whatever I have learned, and whether that learning is available to me or not. So only in a calm mind, whatever I have learned so far is available to me. This is point number one. And the second point is that if the mind has to discover the higher truths, then also this calmness or equanimity of mind is required. So let us look at both of these aspects. So the first point is saying we are saying that a person's thinking ability, a person's past learning, or whatever vivekaha that person has, whatever discrimination the person has developed, that is available only in a calm mind, in an equanimous mind. Because if the mind is disturbed, then whatever learning one may have, that cannot be applied properly in a disturbed mind. So we can take here an example of a student. And we can talk about two aspects of the student's mind. We can call one the emotional quotient, and the other is the intelligence quotient. So EQ and IQ. Now let us take two students. Now one student has a higher IQ and a lower EQ. The other student has a lower IQ and a higher EQ. I hope this is clear. Higher IQ, higher intelligence quotient, lower emotional quotient. The other student has lower intellectual quotient, higher emotional quotient. Now both of them go to the same examination. Both of them have prepared. Both of them go to the same examination. They get the same paper. Let's say there are 100 questions in the paper. Now, objectively speaking, this person with the higher IQ, he knows, he has the intelligence to correctly answer 90 of those 100 questions. Whereas the person with the lower IQ, he knows only, let us say, 70, 65 or 70, whatever answers to those 100 questions. Now, both of them sit for the same examination, but it so happens that the first 10 questions in the exam, both of them don't know the answers to. So now this person has got a higher IQ. He actually knows the answers to all of the 90 questions that follow the first 10 questions. But then looking at the first 10 questions, he says, oh, I did not know this, I did not know this, this is out of syllabus or something like that. And then slowly his mind starts to get into this turmoil. And now he starts to come into, he sees I did not get the first 10 questions, then he comes to 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th question. If his mind had been available, he would have cracked all of those questions. But now his mind has gotten so disturbed that out of the remaining 90 questions, even though he had the ability to answer them, he is only able to solve half of them. So he gets 45 out of 100. Now this other person who has the higher EQ, he looks at the first 10 questions. He says, okay, this I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. But then he maintains the balance of his mind. And then he comes to the rest of the 90 questions. And he knows the answers to 60 of them. And because he applies his mind properly, he is able to answer the 60 questions. So eventually what happens, that the person with the higher IQ, overall he scores less than the person with the lower IQ. So what we say is that the emotional quotient should be the foundation. In some ways, it is the foundation of a building. And then there's the first floor of the building and the second floor of the building. So all of this material learning and intellectual quotient, etc., that all is like the higher floors of the building. So one has to, if one has to have a firm foundation, then the firmness of the foundation is really based on things like the character, one's own values and character, and this emotional quotient is extremely important. The ability to maintain the balance of mind. So, so basically, the point is that a lot of our education these days is just emphasizing on this intellectual quotient part of it. You just read books and books, and the teachers come and explain books and books and books of all of this material knowledge. But then this inner personality, the foundation of that inner personality remains weak. And that is why we have to come to the study of texts like Bhagavad Gita so that we can develop the inner personality and lay the proper foundations of the inner personality. So this is the first reason we said why Samatvam is important, because whatever one has learned, for the knowledge to be available, I should not get emotionally carried away. So that is the first reason. The second reason is that if I have to discover higher truths, then also I need a mind that is available, that doesn't get emotionally carried away. Because adversity in life is a great teacher. I can learn a lot from adverse situations in life. But then I can learn something from the adverse situations only if my mind is available. If my mind is under the sway of my own ragas and dveshas, and if every time there's an adverse situation and my mind gets emotionally carried away, I go through this emotional roller coaster. Basically, there's a lot of screaming and shouting going on inside my mind. And I'm trying to discover somebody to blame for this situation. I'm trying to find who is responsible, who I should label as somebody who has caused this situation to come into my life. Then if that is where the focus of the mind is, then such a reacting mind which gets carried away emotionally can never learn or never discover the higher truths in life. And therefore, we say that a reacting mind cannot discover these higher truths, and a non-reacting mind is required to discover these higher truths of life. And what are these higher truths that we are talking about? The first is that a non-reacting mind learns that the world is not to be blamed for my emotional turmoil. The world is not to be blamed for my emotional turmoil. Then what is the reason for my emotional turmoil? Reason for any emotional turmoil is the dependence that I have upon the world. Or in other words, my own ragas and dveshas that are in some ways making me dependent upon the world. My raga is saying the world should be like this. My dvesha is saying the world should not be like this. So ragas and dveshas are making me emotionally dependent upon the world. And these ragas and dveshas are really responsible for my emotional turmoil, not the world. This truth I have to discover. And if I don't have samatvam, if my mind is getting constantly carried away because of adverse situations, then the mind is not available to discover this higher truths. This is the first point. The second point is that a non-reacting mind learns this higher truth, that every accomplishment in the world has got these three doshas. Every worldly accomplishment has got these three doshas: dukkha mishritatvam, atriptikaratvam, and bandhakatvam. And every accomplishment in the world is mixed with dukkha. There is dukkha, there is struggle, and there is struggle in the acquisition of worldly things. There is struggle in their maintenance. And finally, whatever it is anityaha, it has to depart one day. And when it departs, there is struggle and there is sorrow. So there is dukkha mishritatvam, atriptikaratvam. It leaves me unfulfilled because one day, whatever it is that I am depending on has to depart. Atriptikaratvam and bandhakatvam. It makes me dependent. These worldly accomplishments make me dependent upon the world, which is inherently unpredictable, uncontrollable, and unsustainable. And if I become dependent upon this the world will go through ups and downs. That is the nature of the world, but it is my dependency on the world that is finally causing my shoka, my sorrow. Therefore, dukkha mishritatvam, atriptikaratvam, and bandhakatvam. These truths about every worldly accomplishment only a mind with samatvam can discover. And then the third point is that only a mind with samatvam can also discover my own real higher nature. My Atma nature, only a mind with samatvam can discover, because when I do Shravanam, when I do Mananam, when I do Nididhyasanam, the mind has to be available again. If the mind is reacting to the world, if the mind is going through emotional turmoil, then Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasam are not possible. And therefore, Samatvam is important from the standpoint of the discovery of the higher truths. Therefore, from the standpoint of applying my past learning, Samatvam is required, and from the standpoint of discovering the higher truths of life also, Samatvam is required. Therefore, Bhagavan is emphasizing on Samatvam. And success, real success, according to Vedanta and according to the Bhagavad Gita, is not constantly being successful in every endeavor in the world. That is not what Vedanta, what Bhagavad Gita would call as real success. Because no human being can constantly succeed in every endeavor in the world. But real success is being able to maintain this equanimity of the mind, irrespective of whether my external endeavor results in success or failure. At Karma Yoga stage, I am regulating my responses, and the equanimity is a product of my conscious regulation of my responses. But then once one comes to Jnana Yoga, for a Jnani, the equanimity becomes spontaneous, because the Jnani knows that I am utterly unaffected by these external success or failure. And therefore, for a Jnani, that equanimity, we can say, is largely a product of the knowledge that I am utterly unaffected. And that is where Krishna wants us to eventually get to, where this equanimity becomes spontaneous because of my knowledge of my real nature, which is utterly unaffected by any event that happens within the mithya body mind or the mithya world. That is the eventual destination. But then to get there, I have to have relative equanimity of the mind, because that is the path by which I can come to this absolute, to this understanding that I am absolutely unaffected. And therefore, Krishna is teaching us not how to succeed in every external endeavor, but how to maintain equanimity irrespective of what the result of that external endeavor is. So, if you look at a materialist's prayer would be, Hey Bhagavan, grant me sukha, grant me labha, grant me jaya, grant me pleasures, grant me profit, grant me victory, grant me success. This is what a materialist's prayer would look like. And we would stop, he would put a full stop after that. Now, a karma yogi's prayer is different. A karma yogi does not say, grant me all these things. In fact, he can say that I am putting this effort into this particular endeavor. And Bhagavan, may you give me success in this endeavor. But he doesn't put a full stop there. He adds a comma or a semicolon. And then he says, but if I were to get failure in this particular endeavor, in the external endeavor, if the result is not in keeping with either sukha or labha or jaya, if the result is otherwise, if the result is not in keeping with the expectation or the opposite of what is expected, then give me the equanimity of mind to handle that situation also. So give me the equanimity in case of success and failure is the prayer of a spiritual person. It's the prayer of a karma yogi. So the materialist's goal is called Loka Jayaha. Lokasya Jayaha. He wants to gain victory in victory. Victory, Loke, we can say Loke Jayaha. Victory in the world. Loka Jayaha. Where he wants to win in the world. Or we can say he wants to achieve victory over the world, over the worldly situations. He wants to adjust the world in keeping with his ragas and dveshas. So the aim is Loka Jayaha. Whereas the Karma Yogi's aim is not Loka Jaya. The Karma Yogi's aim is Mano Jaya. He wants victory over his own mind. His aim is he acts in the world, but what is the eventual aim? The eventual aim is, of course, there is a certain goal that he is working towards in the world. And if one gets it, that is fine. But even if one doesn't get it also, his aim is Mano Jayaha, and his eventual aim is that irrespective of what happens in the world, I should gain mastery over my mind, over my own ragas and dveshas. So this is the difference in the prayer of a karma yogi versus the prayer of a materialist. And this is what distinguishes materialism from spirituality. This is what distinguishes karma, pure karma in the world, from karma as yoga, from karma yoga, where the aim is not in karma yoga. In pure karma, the aim is lokajayaha, but in karma yoga, the aim is not lokajayaha, but the aim is manojayaha. And this kind of victory over my own mind, over my own ragas and dveshas. This is what prepares the mind for Jnana Yoga. So here Bhagavan says, Evam tvam papam na avapsyasi. So in this manner, Bhagavan says, you're doing your swadharma. You're doing your swadharma, and therefore there is no question of papam. And if you do this in this manner, evam papam na avapsasi, in this manner, you will get the spiritual growth. You will get the inner growth irrespective of what happens outside. So the key is do your swadharma and have equanimity of mind with regards to the results. And in this manner, you will get Manojaya. So this shloka contains the seed for the teaching of Karma Yoga. The teaching of Karma Yoga is summarized briefly in the second chapter and it is elaborated in the third chapter. So this shloka contains the seed. It has a brief introduction to the topic of Karma Yoga. So in the next verse, Bhagavan indicates the start of a new topic. So he's concluding the topic of Jnana Yoga, Adhyatmika Drishti, and entering the topic of Karma Yoga. We'll read shloka number 39. Esha te bhita sankhye
एषा ते विहिता साङ्ख्ये
buddhiryoge tvimam shrunu
बुद्धिर्योगे त्विमां शृणु
buddhya yukto yaya partha
बुद्ध्या युक्तो यया पार्थ
karma bandham prahasyasi.
कर्मबन्धं प्रहास्यसि.
The padachhedaha, if you do, esha te abhihita sankhye buddhihi yoge tu imam shrunu buddhya yuktah yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. So Bhagavan is saying in the second line we see Partha in the third quarter, Partha. So Bhagavan is saying, Hey Partha, O Arjuna. And Bhagavan says, Abhihita. So we can supply a verb like Bhavati. There is no verb here. In Eshate Abhihita Sankhye, we can supply a word like Bhavati. So Bhagavan says, Abhihita Bhavati means it has been taught. Abhihita Bhavati, it has been taught. So what has been taught? Esha Buddhihi. So we take Esha from the first quarter and Buddhihi from the second quarter. Esha Buddhihi. So Buddhihi here refers to Jnānam. So Esha Buddhihi Abhihita Bhavati means this knowledge has been taught, Bhagavan is saying. And knowledge with regards to what topic? Bhagavan says, Sankhye, Esha te Abhihita Sankhye. So Esha, Sankhye, Esha Buddhihi. Sankhye, Esha Buddhihi Abhihita Bhavati. So he says Sankhye with regards to Sankhyam. So what is Sankhya? So the Sankhya word refers to the Atma. So it is not the Sankhya Darshana here, which is another philosophical system. So that is not what we are talking about here. So here the word Sankhya means with regards to Atma. Sankhya means Atma. So Sankhya Esha Buddhihi means Atma Jnanam. Sankhya Esha Buddhi, Atma Jnanam, Atma Vidya or Brahma Vidya. And Sankhya Esha Buddhi Abhihita Bhavati means this Atma Jnanam has been taught by me. This Brahma Vidya has been taught. And such a Jnanam eradicates samsara and all the distressing symptoms of Shoka and Moha. It eradicates them by uprooting their root cause, which is Atma Ajnanam. And for whom has this been taught? So Bhagavan says, Esha te abhihita. Te abhihita means it has been taught for your sake, for you. And whenever Bhagavan says for you, when he is addressing Arjuna as you, we should also understand it's addressing all of us as well. It has been taught for Arjuna's sake and through Arjuna for our sake. And then Bhagavan says in the second quarter, he says, Shrunu. Shrunu means may you listen. And may you listen to what? Bhagavan says, Buddhihi yoge tu imam shrunu. Yoge tu imam shrunu. So Bhagavan says, Imam shrunu. Now you listen to this wisdom next. Listen to this wisdom next. And wisdom with respect to what? Yoge. One says, Yoge tu imam shunu. Meaning, with regards to yoga. Regards to yoga. Or in other words, we can take this to mean Yoga Shastra or Karma Yoga. So as we have said, Bhagavad Gita is comprised of two teachings. One is Brahma Vidya and the other is Yoga Shastra. Bhagavad Gita, so Upanishads, Brahma Vidyayam, Yoga Shastre. So Brahma Vidya has been taught in a nutshell. Esha te abhita sankhye, Bhagavan says. Brahma Vidya has been taught. Now you listen to the yoga, Bhagavan is saying, the teaching with regards to yoga, which we understand as being karma yoga here. So Bhagavan is now going to start the teaching of karma yoga in a nutshell. And in the last line, Bhagavan says, what is the benefit of this teaching? So Bhagavan says, prahasyasi. Prahasyasi means you will get rid of, you will drop. And what kind of you? So Bhagavan says, buddhya yuktaha yaya partha dharma bandham prahasyasi. So buddhya yuktaha. Yuktaha means endowed with. So endowed with. So you who are endowed, Bhagavan says, yuktaha means you who are endowed. Prahasyasi. Yuktaha tvam prahasyasi. So being you who are endowed will drop, Bhagavan says. The sentence is incomplete. So now the question is, what will you get rid of? What will you drop? So Bhagavan says, karma bandham prahasyasi. You will drop this bondage of karma. You will drop the bondage of karma. So yuktaha karma bandham tvam prahasyasi. Tvam yuktaha karma bandham prahasyasi. You who are endowed with will drop the bondage of karma, Bhagavan says. So now the question is, endowed with what? Endowed with what? Kaya yuktaha. Endowed with what? So Bhagavan says, yaya buddhya. Endowed with which wisdom? With which wisdom of karma yoga? We say the wisdom of karma yoga because Bhagavan has said, yoge tu imam shrunu. So with this wisdom of karma yoga, you will drop the bondage of karma, Bhagavan says. So here, Bhagavan is saying that with this knowledge of karma yoga, and whenever one talks about karma yoga, we should also bring in the anushtanam, because karma yoga is always something whose pure knowledge will not do anything. One has to put it into practice. So one has to understand that with understanding and practice of karma yoga, you will drop the bondage of karma, Bhagavan is saying. So what does dropping the bondage of karma mean? So dropping of bondage of karma means liberation. Liberation from the bondage of karma, or in other words, we can say the liberation. So Bhagavan is saying that with this karma yoga, with this practice of karma yoga, you will get liberated. So here we understand this, and this is really a statement that is not to be taken literally again. But Bhagavan is glorifying karma yoga here. Because one attains moksha or liberation only through Jnānam. Only through Jnānam, not through any karma. The karma yoga helps in preparing the mind for Jnānam. And therefore we can say karma yoga helps, through karma yoga one attains liberation. All right. But we should add indirectly, paramparaya, indirectly, not sakshat. So sakshat means directly, through something one directly attains jnana. Then that is called sakshat karanam. Whereas if through something one indirectly attains moksha, So if through some path one attains moksha directly, then that's called sakshat karanam. Whereas through some path one attains moksha indirectly, then that is called parampara karanam, not sakshat karanam. And therefore, we should add the word indirectly here. So how do we know? How do we know Bhagavan is implying indirectly here? This is because this is where the understanding of Vedanta becomes very important in understanding Bhagavad Gita. Without the understanding of Vedanta, one can misinterpret the Gita. And therefore, we have to look at, for example, Bhagavad Pada says in Atma Bodha, which we saw before we started Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Pada said, बोधोन्यत साधनेभ्यो हि साक्षात मोक्षैक साधनम पाकस्य वन्निवत् ज्ञानम विना मोक्षो न सिद्ध्यति. So बोधः अन्यत् साधनेभ्यः बोधः अन्य साधनेभ्यः साक्षात मोक्षैक साधनम Bhagavad Pada says. So, Jnanam Bodha means Jnanam. Jnanam is Sakshat Mokshaika Sadhanam. It is the only direct sadhana for moksha. Like Pakasya Vannivat, like in case of cooking, one may do a lot of things, right? Like cut vegetables, etc. and put it in a bowl. Add water to the bowl, put it in a bowl, add salt, add pepper, whatever else, put the bowl on the gas. But finally, what cooks is you have to light the fire. So fire is the sakshat karanam for cooking. Everything else is parampara sadhana. So similarly, karma yoga prepares the mind for jnanam, but jnanam alone is the sakshat karanam. And then Bhagavad Pada also gives the reason why karma cannot result in moksha, because moksha is finally, if you look at why there is bondage, it is because of ajnanam, avidya. And karma can never destroy avidya because karma is a product of avidya. Avirodhitaya karma na vidyam vinivartayet vidya vidyam nihantyeva tejas timira sanghavat. This Bhagavad Pada says in the Atma Bodha that avirodhitaya karma na avidyam vinivartayet. That avirodhitaya karma is not opposed to avidya. Virodhitaya karma na avidyam vinivartaye. Therefore, it is incapable of removing avidya. So, karma is not opposed to avidya. Why is karma not opposed to avidya? Because karma is a product of avidya. And the example that we give is that in case if a rope has been mistaken for a snake, if the rope has been mistaken for a snake, then one starts to scream and shout and also beat the snake. So this beating of the snake is a product of the mistaken vision of the snake. It is a karma that originates from the mistaken vision of the snake. So that karma which originates from the mistaken vision of the snake itself can never remove the snake nor the rope ignorance, because it's a product of ignorance. It is a product of mistake. And therefore, such karma can never remove the underlying ignorance. That can be removed only by jnanam. So, vidya, avidyam nihanti, Bhagavad Pada says. Vidya, avidyam nihanti. It's only knowledge that destroys avidya or ignorance. Tejas timira sanghavat. Like darkness is destroyed only by light and by no other means. Similarly, ignorance is destroyed only by knowledge. And therefore, Jnanam alone is sakshat mokshaika sadhanam. So when Bhagavan says here, karma bandham prahasyasi, we should not literally take it to mean that karma yoga, just by following karma yoga, one will attain freedom from bondage of karma. Karma yoga will prepare the mind, and the prepared mind will get the jnanam, and therefore karma yoga is a parampara karanam for moksha. So we should be very clear. We should be very clear. This is where the fundamentals of Vedanta become very important in properly understanding the Bhagavad Gita. That moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam. Moksha can be attained only through one means, and that means is jnanam and jnanam alone. Why is moksha eka sadhana sadhyam? Why is it attained only by jnanam? Because the samsara from which I want to gain freedom. So moksha means freedom. So freedom from what? Freedom from this disease of samsara. Freedom from samsara and all of its distressing symptoms of shoka and moha. So this freedom from samsara, we say, is attained only by jnanam, because this samsara and all of its distressing symptoms of shoka and moha are a product of ajnanam. Ajnanam, that I am already the Purna Atma, the Ajnanam is there, and that is what causes my Apurnatvam and Samsaraha. And therefore, Samsaraha is removed only by one means, which is Jnanam. Then this Jnanam is also Eka Sadhana Sadhyam. Jnanam is also attained only by one means, which is that one has to have an appropriate pramanam. Pramanam has to be there. And the pramanam, like if I have to gain knowledge of colors in this world, I have to use my eyes. The eyes are the pramana, the means of knowledge for gaining knowledge of colors. The ears are the means of knowledge for gaining knowledge of sounds. Similarly, if I have to gain Atma Jnanam, the means of knowledge are the Shabdas of Vedanta. Shabdas of Vedanta are the only means of knowledge. And therefore, that Jnanam is also Eka Sadhana Sadhyam, and the Pramanam are the Shabdas of Vedanta. But then for this knowledge to take place, I have to have a qualified mind. Like, for example, if my eyes have to reveal the colors, there should be no obstruction in the functioning of my eyes. If there is cataract in my eyes cannot appreciate the colors properly. Similarly, if there is a cataract in my mind, then if the Shabdas of Vedanta will not be able to do their job, like the eyes cannot do their job in the presence of a cataract. If there is a cataracted mind, that cataracted mind is incapable of gaining the Jnanam even in the presence of Shabdas of Vedanta. And therefore the mind has to be freed of its cataract. Mind has to be purified. That is what we call Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi has to be there. The mind has to be qualified. Or in other words, Jnana Yogyata. Qualifications for the Jnanam have to be there. And for gaining this qualified mind, Karma Yoga becomes extremely, extremely important. And that is why we say Karma Yoga indirectly leads to Moksha. So all the means collectively. So this Chitta Shuddhi is not Eka Sadhana Sadhyam. There is not just one sadhana for gaining Chitta Shuddhi. There can be multiple sadhanas for gaining Chitta Shuddhi, and all those sadhanas collectively are called Karma Yoga. So what is the relationship between Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, if we see? Then Jnana Yoga is impossible without the prior stage of Karma Yoga, because the Karma Yoga alone gives the preparedness of mind. But Karma Yoga by itself is incomplete, because Karma alone cannot lead to Jnanam and Moksha. So Karma Yoga has to be followed by Jnana Yoga. So they are sequential. Karma Yoga followed by Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga, through Karma Yoga, I gain Chitta Shuddhi, and with a prepared mind, I follow Jnana Yoga, expose myself to the Pramana, the Shabdas of Vedanta, do Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, and through that I gain Jnanam, and through Jnanam I gain Moksha. Because I see that Moksha is already my real nature. So this is what Bhagavan means here. So there are no multiple paths to moksha. See, this is like we said that that there are a lot of interpretations of the Bhagavad Gita where this shloka is taken literally and said that through karma yoga alone one can attain moksha, and therefore this idea about multiple paths to moksha. You can have karma, you can have bhakti, you can have raja yoga, you can have jnana yoga. All of these are parallel paths to moksha. All of these ideas come in. But Vedanta, a proper understanding of Vedanta, rejects all of these ideas. This is why we say that an understanding of the fundamentals of Vedanta and the Upanishads are important in understanding the Bhagavad Gita. Because the Bhagavad Gita, as we have said, Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Artho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gita Amritam Mahat. The Bhagavad Gita is an essence of the Upanishads, and therefore it cannot go against the Upanishads. That's why Bhagavad Pada says, Tadinam Gita Shastram Samasta Vedartha Sangraha Bhutam. That this Gita Shastram is an essence of the Vedic teaching. So the Bhagavad Gita cannot contradict what the Vedas are saying, and the Bhagavad Gita has to be understood in keeping with the Vedic teaching. And therefore, there are many people who may profess the idea that in Kali Yuga, Jnana Yoga is very difficult, and therefore you just do something else. Something else will lead to moksha. Just do Nama Sankirtanam. Or something else, just do Nama Japa, that itself will lead to moksha. So normally a person who doesn't have any background, he will say, yes, wonderful teaching and all that. But for somebody who has the knowledge of the fundamentals of Vedanta, who has understood what the Vedic teaching is, who has understood what the Upanishad teaching is, such statements should raise a red flag in the mind. And then one understands, one can say that yes, Nama Sankirtanam is a wonderful sadhana, Nama Japam is a wonderful sadhana, one can do all that. But that its final result is Chitta Shuddhi and not Moksha. And with that Shuddha Manasa, with that Shuddha Chittaha, one has to expose oneself to the Pramana for the rise of Jnanam, and Jnanam eva Sakshat Mokshaika Sadhana. That is the only direct means to moksha. This has to be crystal clear. So, here Bhagavan says, Karma Bandham Prahasyasi. So, through Karma Yoga, one drops the bondage of karma, and as we said, we add the word indirectly. So what does this bondage of karma really mean? What does karma bandham really mean? So if we were to see, we can look at the word karma in two ways. We can look at karma as either just action. Actions done in the world are also called karma. Or we can look at karma as the adrishta phalam, which is the punya papam. Punya papam, that is the adrishta phalam of the karma. That is also called karma. So we can look at it either way. So how do these bind is the question. So if we look at it, if one is committed to karma in the world, especially karma in the domains of arthaha, kamaha and dharmaha. Karma done for the sake of artha, acquisition of arthaha, kamaha or dharmaha, or karma for the sake of acquisition of the first three purusharthas. Then such a karma is done with the intention that I am apurnaha, and through this karma I will gain purnatvam. If I keep doing karma in the field of arthaha, kamaha and dharmaha, then I will gain purnatvam. So if one does this, then then that karma can never result in Purnatvam, as we have seen, because every karma phala is mixed with the three doshas, Dukkha Mishritatvam, Atriptikaratvam, Bandhakatvam. So no karma phala, because every karma phala is anitya, therefore I can never gain Purnatvam through any karma phala. And therefore it keeps me going in the cycle of samsara. I keep doing karma, I get limited karma phalam. So kriti mahodadhau patana karanam phalam ashashvatam gati nirodhakam. So one keeps doing karma in the world, and one gets stuck in this cycle of karma and limited karma phalam, and I remain apurnaha. And being apurnaha, I cannot stand myself being apurnaha, and therefore, since I cannot accept myself being apurnaha, I'm constantly engaged in some karma or the other. And therefore, karma binds. And moreover, my raga dveshas, all of these karmas are originating from my raga dveshas. I like this in the world, so I pursue this. I don't like this in the world, and therefore I have to adjust the world in keeping with my ragas and dveshas. And therefore, now if I get, so my karmas are prompted by my ragas and dveshas, and whatever result I get, if the result is in keeping with my raga, I am on an emotional high. If the result is not in keeping with my raga, or in other words, if I have dvesha towards the result, then one has helplessness, anger, frustration, depression. And the results are always, they cannot give me permanent fulfillment. There's only a fleeting sense of fulfillment. So the same limited individual with the ragas and dveshas remains intact. And samsara continues. So karma binds, if we take karma to mean action. On the other hand, if we take karma to be the adrishta phalam, like punyam and papam, then how does that bind? Because this janma has been taken, why? Because of my prarabdha karma. So because of prarabdha karma, because of prarabdha punya and papa, I have taken this janma. And then in this janma, I am exhausting my prarabdha karma, but I am also gaining new karma called agami karma. With all of my actions in the world, I am also gaining agami karma. So prarabdha is getting exhausted as his life progresses. And then I am gaining new agami karma. And then there's a bundle of karma, punya papa, from all of my past lives, which is called sanchita karma, that is already there, unexhausted. And so the new agami karma, from that the prarabdha has gotten exhausted, but the new agami karma keeps replenishing the sanchita karma. So when this body falls, there is already all this past sanchita karma plus the new agami karma, minus the prarabdha that got exhausted. So the sanchita keeps getting replenished with every janma, and that sanchita, again, a part of it, which is the next prarabdha, results in the next janma, and then that gets exhausted, the new agami, and the cycle continues. And therefore, even if you were to take karma as punya papa, then karma binds. And now, if you look at karma yoga on the other hand, karma yoga, like we said, is not for loka jaya but for mano jaya. So karma yoga uses the same karma, same kind of karma that if one does with the intention of loka jaya, then that karma binds, as we have seen, because one is doing it with the intention of fixing something in the world, and the ragas and dveshas remain intact in the process. My ragas and dveshas remain intact. And I am acting out of my ragas and dveshas. And the results, I am reacting to the results constantly. I am on an emotional roller coaster. But that same karma can be employed for inner growth or for manojaya instead. So the analogy that we give is like that of cobra poison. So cobra poison results in death in general. But then if that same cobra poison is used wisely, then it can even save a person. So similarly, if karma is employed wisely in the world, then that karma that would have otherwise resulted in a continuation of this bondage results instead in the purification of the mind. So how does that happen in case of a karma yogi? In case of a karma yogi, the person does not act according to one's ragas and dveshas, but the person acts according to one's own swadharma. So at the time of action, one doesn't go by I like this and therefore I pursue that, or I dislike this and therefore I try to adjust the world according in keeping with my dvesha. That is not the motivation. Motivation is what is my duty, what is my swadharma, and I engage in swadharma during acting. When I engage in swadharma, so even if I don't like something, I do that because it is my swadharma. I don't do it because I don't skip doing it because I don't like it. That is not the rationale. I do it because it is my swadharma, even if I don't like it. So the ragas and dveshas, I'm creating a distance from my ragas and dveshas. So even if so if there is something I like to do, but if that is not my swadharma, then I don't do that, even if I like to do it. And even if I don't like to do something, but if that is my swadharma, I still do it because it is my swadharma. So in this process, I develop a distance from my own ragas and dveshas. Similarly, when there is the outcome of my results, when I get certain experiences in life, then as we have seen, again, the person, a pure materialist, will jump up and down if the result is in keeping with the raga. He is on an emotional high. On the other hand, if the result he does not like, he goes into helplessness, anger, and all of that, frustration. On the other hand, a karma yogi maintains the equanimity of mind at the time of experiencing the results. When the results arrive, he has equanimity of mind, and there again he creates a distance from his own ragas and dvesha. And therefore, this kind of an attitude results in a purification of the mind. Ishwararpitam nechaya kritam chitta shodhakam mukti sadhakam, says the Upadesha Saram. So the swadharma, whatever I do as my swadharma, it is dedicated to Ishvara. Ishwararpitam nechaya kritam. Na ichhaya kritam. I have not done it. I have not done it because I have a certain liking to do that. I have done it because it is my swadharma. And such actions, and when I accept the results with equanimity, chitta shodhakam, they become a means for purifying the mind. Mukti sadhakam, they become a means for, an indirect means for moksha. And one also gains the grace of Ishvara through this. Because they are Ishwararpitam, I am doing my Swadharma, they are Ishwararpitam, I do them as an offering to Ishwar. This itself becomes a form of worship to Ishwar. And due to the grace of Ishvara, I get three things. I get the spiritual inclination. As I live this kind of a lifestyle, I develop an interest in Vedanta. I get the spiritual inclination. I begin to see if there are higher pursuits in life. And one also gets the spiritual competence, one gets the qualifications, one gets the Jnana Yogyata, one gets the Chitta Shuddhi. And one also gets the spiritual opportunity. One gets the spiritual opportunity in terms of a guru who comes into my life and who teaches me Vedanta. I get conducive situations in my life so that I can engage in Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana. And therefore, through this Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, then I discover that this Purnatvam that I have been seeking is my own nature. Because I took myself to be a Purnaha, I was depending upon the world. But once I discover this Purnatvam is my own nature, then I shift from world dependence to self-dependence. I am the only source of permanent peace, security, and happiness. This higher truth I discover. This is what we call Atma Jnanam. This is freedom from the bondage of karma. Either meaning of karma we can take. Is freedom from this bondage to constantly engage in something or the other in the world for the sake of Purnatvam. I don't need to do that anymore once I discover that I am Purna. And it is also freedom from this bundle of Sanchita karma, which was resulting in this constant births in the cycle of samsara, constant punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. It also gives freedom from that because the entire sanchita karma, the bundle gets burnt. It is like awakening from a dream. If one has done some crimes in the dream, then one may be having trial in the dream, one goes to courtroom in the dream, and then one gets thrown in a jail in the dream. But then once one awakens from the dream, then one cannot be tried for the crimes that were done in the dream because it is in a totally different order of reality. For all the crimes done in the dream, the waker cannot get arrested. So similarly, all the punya papas, all the vyavaharika punya papas, they cannot touch the paramarthika atma. And therefore it is similar to awakening from the dream. The sanchita karma gets burnt. The prarabdha karma is exhausted. For a jnani, living the life exhausts the prarabdha. The sanchita has been burnt and the agami karma is avoided. There is no new agami karma that accrues to the jnani because he knows I am akarta, abhokta as the atma. Therefore, there is no new agami karma. And therefore, at the time of videha mukti of a jnani, the karma balance is zero because sanchita has been burnt, agami has been avoided, and prarabdha has been exhausted. And therefore, karma bandham rahasyasi is freed from the bondage of karma. So Jnana Yoga alone is the direct means of moksha, and Karma Yoga is an indirect means of moksha. So here Bhagavan said, if we look at these words, Bhagavan said, Esha te abhihita sankhye. So this knowledge has been taught to you. Atma Jnanam was taught. And that is why the subject matter of the second chapter is Sankhya or Atma. This was taught predominantly in starting from verse number 11 to verse number 30. And that's why the second chapter is also titled Sankhya Yoga, meaning the chapter whose subject matter is Sankhya or the Atma. And then from verses 31 to 38, they were all contextual verses where we saw that Bhagavan taught from the Dharmika Drishti and also from the Laukika Drishti. That was from verses 31 to 38. Then in verse number 39, Bhagavan is now summarizing what has been taught and what is going to come. And now from verses 39 to verse number 48, Bhagavan will be getting into the topic of Karma Yoga, where he's starting with the glorification of Karma Yoga as we have seen. And then verse number 48 defines Karma Yoga. We'll come to that when hopefully in the next couple of classes. So here in the second chapter, the topic of Karma Yoga is only briefly taken up and then it is expanded upon in the third chapter. So yoge tvam imam shrunu. Now you listen to the topic of Karma Yoga, Bhagavan says, which we will take up in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.